Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing some trivets. Now I did these a couple of years ago when I barely knew what a trivet was, and these turned out really well. There's a funny story behind these. My sister called and asked me if I could make these, described exactly what she had seen in a store, and this is what I expected she meant. When I found out what she really meant, it was nothing like these, but honestly, these have turned out to be really, really nice. We have a set in my house. I've sent a set to my mother, and they're really simple to make. All you need is a big board of, well, I use red oak, but you could use anything. This is just 3/4 board, and this is jute cord. I believe I got this either from Michael's or Lowe's. I'm not really sure. This is 4-ply number 72 from Hampton Art, 1 pound, 45 something or other. There's the label if you want to check it out. Hopefully the camera is focusing on that. I'm going to get the table saw cleaned off, and we're going to start cutting down the board to make some nice trivets. So this is the board of red oak I picked up, and you can make these out of just about any wood. Wood is really expensive right now. This was somewhere around $55. I'm hoping it provides a lot of trivets. This is about 7 1/4 by 6 foot 2-ish inches. Not really worried about the dimensions. We're going to be busting this down into a bunch of smaller pieces here in a minute. But the first thing I need to do is I'm going to have to chop this up into smaller boards so it's easier to push across my table saw. So the first thing I'm going to do, use a 3/4 analog here. This is just a piece of, this is Purple Heart, just an extra piece of wood I have lying around the shop. And I'm just going to put the teeth just a little bit above that. Lock in my blade. There we go. We'll get my miter gauge out. Let's measure this board again. We're getting a couple inches past 6 foot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out 2-foot sections. So 2-foot section will be really easy for me to get through the table saw. Make that line a little easier to see. So we'll turn on the dust extractor, and then we're going to start cutting. So I'm just going to take this board I just cut, put it on top of the other one, and we're going to mark that off. So that's where we want to cut the second board. These are going to be the blanks for all the small pieces that we need to cut. So next thing we need to do is bring the fence over, and we're going to make these into square sticks. Now the edges on these should already be pretty straight. You know, I feel like I still want to shave a little bit off of each edge. So I'm just going to take a sliver off of each edge. We're going to get the tooth just a millimeter into the board like that. I'm going to slide these through there. Got my push block, got my dust collection. I'm going to turn this on its end, move the fence up, and just dial that into about 3/4, right like that. So this is the edge I've already trimmed up. So we're going to turn this over so that that edge is up against the fence, and we're going to turn all these boards into strips. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my push block is set up properly. This side is actually the perfect size to go on the opposite side of the blade. I think this is only like a 1/2 inch. So we're going to readjust this gripper so that that side is over there. So now that's going to go right through there, no problem. There's a lot of wiggle room there. So now I'm going to flip these boards also, so when I bring them over, the cut edge will already be in the correct position. Here we go. We're going to turn all three of these boards into square sticks. So I was getting a lot of burning, so I adjusted my fence so it's slightly tilted away from the blade on the back end. That stops the wood from binding up as it gets to the end here. And I'm still getting a little bit, but that's not near as bad as the first couple pieces that went through. For Trivets, this isn't going to really matter. They're still going to look good, but I just don't like to have those burning marks if I can avoid it. Now we've got a bunch of sticks. And these three pieces, which were the leftover parts of each. These can actually be used for edge banding. I might have another use for them here coming up. I'm not sure if red oak would work for the thing that I need. But now we're ready to cut these up into the smaller chunks. And there's a lot of sawdust around the floor here, so I'm going to take a quick second and sweep that up so that it's not dangerous. So what we're left with after that is just a whole bunch of these square sticks, about 2 foot long and 3/4 by 3/4. Now your trivets might vary in dimensions depending on what kind of stock you started with. And now what I need to do is take a measurement from the original ones. And it looks like each of the little sticks in these is 3 inches. So we're going to convert all of these sticks into a bunch of 3-inch pieces. No, we're not. First, I'm going to route all the edges off. It'll be a lot easier to route all these sharp edges with my new router bit before I cut them into a bunch of little pieces. So actually, that's what we're going to do. We're going to clean off the router, we're going to put the correct bit in there, and we're going to put the round over on all these sticks before we cut them up. So I'm just going to take this, put the 1/8 inch up there. That looks really good. I'm pretty sure that's definitely 1/8 inch round over. So we're going to replace the bit that's currently in here with my new 1/8 inch round over bit. Now I need to adjust this to make sure it's the perfect height. So we're going to grab a scrap block of wood to run through there. Your scrap can literally be anything. This is just a piece of 3/4 inch pine that was lying around. I've got some push blocks. Before I test it, I'm going to sight across the table, get nice and low. That looks like it's a little too high. Looks better. We're going to lock it in. And this is a very loud router, so I have ear protection here right next to it. Okay, I'm going to put on my hearing protection. I'll turn on the dust collector, which I've switched over to the router table. And then we're going to send this board through and take a look. Yeah, that looks perfect. I'm not getting any weird shapes on the top or on the sides. I think that's exactly what we want. That looks like the same exact radius that was on the original Trivets. So that's what we're going to go with. Let's run a few pieces of the square stock through there and take a look. Okay, so I adjusted the fence so it's a little further to the front. but still not getting in the way of the blade. These still need to ride on that bearing. Alright, I am seeing a slight edge on here from the bit being a little bit too high. I don't know if you can catch that or not. So I'm gonna raise, or I'm sorry, yeah, it's a little too high. So I'm gonna raise that bit just a little bit more. I'm sorry, lower the bit. I need to lower the bit just a little bit. By the way, when you're dialing this in, use the pieces that you don't like so much. I have a lot of burning on some of these pieces, and those are the ones I'm practicing on first. Okay, let's try this. Yep, that's perfect. So we're going to go with that and send all of our sticks through there. I'm going to make sure that my area is clean. Here's the things that I need are my remote for my dust collector, some of my pieces that I'm going to start with, my hearing protection. I don't really need these push blocks at this moment, but they're going to be back here where they usually are. And I'm going to also prep my pieces so that I know they're in the correct orientation. So I'm going to go ahead and run through some of these and eventually get through the entire pile. Okay, we got all of our sticks rounded over. Next step is going to be cutting these into 3-inch chunks. Alright, to cut these up into smaller pieces, we're going to use the miter gauge. We're going to move these over here out of the way. Okay, so we want 3 inches from this side of the blade to our stop. Now we do not want to use the fence as a stop here. If you do this, you're going to have a bad day. This is going to get stuck in here and it's going to shoot back at you. You're going to have black and blue marks at the very least. At the worst, you could end up with a visit to the doctor or the ER. So what we're going to do is grab my tape measure, or one of the 16 I have around here. I'm going to measure 3 inches between the fence, my block, and the blade. And again, these are Trivets. This does not have to be perfect, but that looks pretty darn good right there. So now I move my block back here. I could put my stick in here, and as soon as I have it butted up against here, I can move that out of the way, cut, and I'll test that to make sure that that's 3 inches. I couldn't get any better than that. That's perfect. We should be able to double up some of these sticks. And cut several pieces at a time. Here we go. These are just garbage, and there might be a project you could use these for. I'm probably just going to throw those in the fire bin. But this is the size we're looking for. However, I have a bunch of this size and this size. Now these are too large to do the same way that we were doing the regular ones. So I'll show you how we're going to do those right now. So this is the size that we're looking for. But if we try to send these through that same way, so we throw them in here, we line them up with the block, you can see there's a very small part of it on the fence. So when I move this out of the way, that's very precarious. And I'm going to be pushing that into a giant spinning blade. You see how close my fingers are here, and I am not comfortable with that, and neither should you be. Anytime a safety issue like this comes up, you need to find a way around it. Don't just let it be. Don't just deal. Even these pieces, which are a little larger, mean that I do not have a lot to hold on to here, and these will start lifting up a little bit, which means I've got to push them down. It's just not a good method. So we're going to move him over here since he's a good one. Actually, we're going to grab him back for a minute. I've got this little gauge here, so let me bring the camera around so you can see this better. There, so what we want is pieces this size, but what we've got is pieces this size and this size. We're going to adjust this stop so that the space in between is just as big as this piece. And now, even with these smaller ones, it's much easier for me to just grab this side, and I'll be able to cut off this small bit and have all of this to grab a hold of with my hand. Now, I'm not going to do these multiples at a time. It's still, it's just not a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these now. You can see those two are now the same exact size. So we're just going to do that to all of the extra pieces that were too small to cut. And there, instead of wasting material, we got 3, 6, 9, 12, 14, 15, 16 extra pieces. One trivet is 10 pieces, so we've got enough for 1.5 trivets here that would have been too dangerous to get out of it had it not been for a different way to cut them. This is our pile of sticks that we've completed, and these are almost ready to go. There's a few things left to do. First thing is, a few of them have stickers on them, and I would like to get rid of those stickers. And another thing is, there's still a few of them with very light but still present burn marks from the saw. So I'm going to sort these into ones that I want to sand just a little bit and get rid of these stickers. And then we're going to go on to the last, and then we're going to go on to the next step. Now we're going to take off the saw marks here, and I'm just going to use the sander here. I don't want to sand too aggressively. We put a 1/8 inch round over on all of these, and so I don't want to take that down so that it gets rid of that. But just to show you how quickly this is to sand a little bit of this off, I'll do one in real time. So this is what they both look like. They're both very similar. So let me turn on my dust collector and we'll sand one off and compare them. And just like that, we went from having them both almost identical to not. It does not take a lot to remove this, so I don't want to hold it on here too long or it's going to change the shape of the stick. And again, these are trivets. They don't have to be perfect, but we don't want them to get too much different out of shape, or else it'll look a little weird when we're finished. So now I'm going to go through the big box of Trivets. Turns out just about all of them have a little bit of burning on them. So we're going to go through every single one of them and make sure that they're all cleaned up a little bit better than that. Okay, so we have all of those sanded out now. We've got a giant pile of sanded sticks. The next step is going to be using the router table again. We've got our side edge rounding on here, but we need the end grain rounding. You can see right there, these are very sharp corners. We're going to use the same setup that I left on there because I knew we'd have to do this. So we're going to use the 1/8 inch round over bit, and we're going to go through every one of these 3-inch sticks. I haven't counted. There's probably over 100 of these things, and each one needs 8 passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to take a while. I'm going to get my headphones back on, listen to my music, and something worth noting, when you're dealing with something that is done over and over and over again, it's just a repetitive task, you've got to be careful. Number one, you got to pay attention. It's easy to lose track of what you're doing, and you don't want to do that around a bit that could be spinning at 10,000 or higher RPMs. With the sander, it's not quite as bad. I had a few of these shoot out of my hand. It's fine. Sometimes you get some abrasions from the sander, but it's usually not too bad. But with something like the router table, it could be devastating. Same thing with the table saw, bandsaw. Be very careful doing very repetitive tasks like this, and basically just pay attention to what you're doing. It could be bad. Alright, I'll see you guys over at the router table. Thankfully it's already set up, we just have to move the fence a bit. We want the bearing of this bit to be exactly even with the fence. So I'm going to start by just using a straight edge here. There we go. So I'm perfectly flat with the fence, and when I move it back and forth, it's moving the bearing back and forth. So I'm going to tighten down one side of the fence, and then I'm going to tighten down the other side of the fence. Now the idea will be that I can grab one of my pieces, and instead of blowing out like this, that'll be held directly up against this piece when I'm pushing through. And so this will stop that from blowing out. So there we go. We've got all of our edges perfectly rounded off. I think this is going to work just perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of these sticks. Now that we've got a huge pile of these little wooden sticks, we're going to try to drill all the holes in them. To do that, I'm going to take one of them, and we're going to, let's see, it's 24-30 seconds, and so we want to line at 12. I'm going to draw it both directions so that we know that that's in the middle. Yep, that's perfectly in the middle. And we're going to do the same in this direction. And that's right where we want our hole to be centered. Very similar to the original piece. So let's clean up the work area. And we're going to want to make this, this hole on every single piece multiple times, both sides. So I've got my fence here. We're going to turn on my lights. We're going to get this lined up pretty close to where we need it. Right there is where I want it. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that down like that. And now I can move my fence as much as I need to. Now let's get one of our stop blocks in position, so that we can just butt each one up against this and it'll be in the correct location. There we go. So now we can release. Put down our stop block. Drill the hole straight. We're not going to want to go the whole way through. Let's try something like there first. And that should be the same if we hold it this direction, which actually might be a little easier. So we're going to hold it like that. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look here. It's looking pretty good. So we're going to go ahead down as far as I have it opened up that it'll stop. Tap it out, and we should be able to do the other side. There shouldn't be an awful lot left. There we go. So we've got what looks to me like a perfect hole straight through. Now you got to be careful of this here. You want this to be flat up against the fence, and so if you get stuff trapped in there, you need to get it out of there. Here's the one we already drilled. We'll get a bunch here lined up and ready. We're moving along. We've got all of our pieces cut out. We've got the edges rounded off. They're actually pretty smooth already, so I don't think we're going to have to waste a lot of time on sanding more. Now we need to pick a finish. We can use mineral oil. Mineral oil is very food safe, pretty easy to put on. It can get a little messy though. Danish oil, when it cures, it's also food safe. Very easy to wipe on and just leave this one soak in. I have wipe-on polyurethane. That'll look really good. It holds up against things like alcohol, which lacquer would not. And then I have a fast drying spray polyurethane. This is a brand new can. I tried another can recently on a different project and had really bad results. But when I tested this today, I had great results. So that's an option. I think what I'm going to go with though is the Danish oil. This is what I used last time. It works perfectly and you get really good results. I like how it darkens the grain, so it pops it out a little more. So I think that's what we're going to go with today. We're finally down to the last step. This is one of the old Trivets, and here's one of the new Trivets. So the old Trivets didn't have holes in these extra pieces, and I left them in this Trivet because if whoever I give these to would ever want to, they could take all of the Trivet pieces they've got, buy themselves some twine, and make one bigger trivet if they'd want to for a larger pot or pan. So it kind of gives you options. It's easier to do this too, so you don't have to remember how many get the holes on both sides and how many only get a hole on one side. Putting these together is pretty easy. There's really just one piece of rope the whole way through like this, and then you tie it on this side and put a little dab of super glue on there. So I like to get out 10 of my trivet pieces, and then I need to cut some twine. This is the twine I used last time. I believe this is probably just from Michael's. Get a piece cut off there. And then I have what I believe is a plastic canvas needle. This hole is pretty big. You might be able to fit the twine in there, but what I did instead is I just put a piece of thread on here so I don't have to try to thread the needle with this thick twine. Just put this in through here, and now I can start my pattern. So what we want is this design. So what I'm going to do is go up through one side and back through the other. And at this point it's just on the string, it's not on the twine yet. So now if we go ahead and pull, pulls that twine right through. Now we just go back through the other way and we thread on the extra pieces. Now I'm going to make sure this is nice and tight. I'm going to do a loop over. Then I'm going to do another loop over, and we're going to tighten that. Then we'll just cut that off flat. And then use some medium or thin CA glue so that it has the ability to penetrate this knot nicely. Now I've had some trivets like this for years now, and I've never had a problem with this twine. And as is the motto of this project, rinse, wash, and repeat. and we should have enough to make 17 individual trivets. So I'll have enough to give 2 trivets to 8 people, and a few pieces left over in case some of these pieces are no good. Okay, there we go. So basically I have now 8 pairs of trivets. These things super easy to store in drawers. You can just fold them up if you need to. Super compact, and whenever you need them, they fold out. These have been big enough to hold our pots, our pans, pretty much anything hot we have that we need to put on them. Sometimes we double them up and have 2 right next to each other, but that's usually not necessary. As I mentioned before, these are great for gifts. I'm giving some away for Christmas gifts myself. And if you're making them yourself, you just make these little pieces and you can make as long or wide of a trivet as you want. They're kind of like building with wooden Legos. I've got a couple other gifts I need to make this year, but now the trivets are all done, and that's 8 gifts finished. So I'll just have to find a way to package them together, maybe a piece of red ribbon or something, just something simple to hand off, and then these will be done. So hopefully I'll get to the other Christmas gifts soon. I'd like to make a video for those as well before Christmas, so I could show you guys how to make those as well. It's going to be new to me, whereas I've made these before. So I hope you liked this video. I hope you're following along, and if you have any comments or suggestions, I'd love to have suggestions. Put them down in the comments section. If you have any photos you'd like to share, please share them with us. Thanks for coming along. I hope you keep following us, and I can't wait to see you next time.